safety valve is popping. Heavily patronized indeed. If you've ever listened to any of old Winston Link's record albums or CDs, you'll hear a number of Class J's on those. They have different tones of their whistles, but they all sound pretty similar, like steamboats. This ex-N&W 480 is served on branch lines on the N&W, but you heard its hooter whistle. Pretty much freight locomotives on the railroad use them, like the Class A's and the Class Y's. Yeah, the 611 is taking it easy on the Strasburg, but back when they were hauling revenue passenger trains on the N&W, east of Petersburg through the flatlands to Norfolk, they routinely hit 100 miles per hour.
We'll start on the engineer side. This is the power reverser. You move this forward and it'll go forward. Move this back and it'll go back. And then they'll adjust it whenever we're running for steam usage. This handle right here is one or two methods of putting water in the boiler. This is the injector. It uses steam pressure to move water straight from the tender straight into the boiler. And we usually use it when we're sitting still because it kills pressure real good. This is the throttle. It's basically the gas pedal for the steam engine. You open up the throttle, and there's these little valves on the front that open up, and the steam goes to the cylinders. That's how this works. This is the cylinder cocks. There are two on each cylinder. Water cannot compress. If we don't open these up before we move, water can hit, and it can either break the piston or cylinder. Anyway, very expensive. So we leave these open while we're sitting, and we open the throttle and watch for the water to come out, and once it's dry steam, we'll shut it back off. These are the air appliances for the train. This is the bell. You pull the valve out, ringy dingy dingy, and then you push it in and it'll stop. These are the sanders for each driver on the locomotive. Sometimes the engine slips and lose traction, and the sand goes right in the wheels to give it traction. These two are the brakes. This is the train brake, which sets the brakes for the locomotive and the train itself. And then this is the independent brake, which is just for the locomotive itself. And they use it to keep the train stretched, slow it down, and however else they need it to do. And move over here. This is the water column. These are all the water appliances for the boiler. This is the water glass, which tells how much water is in the boiler. And if for some reason the glass breaks or something leaks to where we can't use this anymore, this is where these come to play, which are tripocks, which you open this up and you see where the water is in relation to these knobs. This is the turret. This is the manifold. You open this up and it basically shows for the steam gauges and stuff like that to be able to use the appliances. This is the dynamo that powers the lights and electricity through the train. And of course, this is the firebox. You can take a look in here.
Ooh.
Inside the firebox. And with the firebox being so big, we can't hand fire, but it's physically impossible to hand fire. So this is what the stoker's for. There's a steam engine underneath here that turns the shaft, runs the screw underneath the tender through here, and feeds it into the firebox. And the controls are over here. This is for the stoker engine itself. You regulate how fast the screw will move. And this is the stoker blast. And the stoker blast is the jets right out here that spread the coal out throughout the firebox. And I'll demonstrate it to you right quick. We'll turn the jets up to about 50 psi. Turn it off about like this. And take a taste. See how it works. there's the fire for the engineer. This handle right here is the second method of putting water into the boiler. This is a feed water system, which is a steam-powered little pump that moves water to the front of the engine into this tank in the smoke box, where it preheats it and the water goes into the boiler from there. And we mainly use this whenever we're moving, because with the warm water it won't kill the pressure as bad. And this handle right here is the blower. When we're sitting still, there's no draft, and if we don't use this, the smoke and the fire will come out to the side. Anyway, it's not very good. And so this creates the draft, which is basically a ring by where the exhaust comes out, and it blows steam out the stack to create the draft to the fire box. I know I just spoke pretty quick, but do you have any questions or anything?
I have two questions.
Okay.
Are they planning on putting any PTC equipment in this engine, and are they planning maybe to possibly turn it into an oil burner?
I don't have a clue. I don't know what the plans for it is. As far as I know, I don't know. But any other questions? No, I think I'm good.
And we also credit Fred capturing this scene. In the last car, His son Joe and myself are showing great exuberance, enjoying this lovely journey behind the great 611. Well, here you see the Strasburg Railroad's greatest locomotive, ex-Great Western sugar beet hauler in Colorado, 210-0 Decapod, number 90. This is being backed into the shop to couple onto the 475. They're going to do some outdoor maintenance on both of these locomotives today. Making noise, but there's nobody in those steamers. This is the Baldwin Locomotive Works 060, number 26, hauling passengers on the Scranton Limited excursion. Now we cover the Iron Horse Rambles in the summer of 2022 on the Reading and Northern. And here we see ex-Reading T1 484 number 2102 barnstorming out of Port Clinton, Pennsylvania. I want to tell you, the goosebumps were popping at this moment. (2102) has a beautiful Reading Company 6-chime passenger whistle on it. The Reading was another railroad that differentiated between freight and passenger. The passenger whistle sounded like that, and the freight whistles were just a single high-pitched shrill, which you will hear later. Our location is now Nesquehoning, Pennsylvania, passing the site where a future passenger station will be built. It's there now. I had to include these two resplendent Reading and Northern F9s. The Lee unit is a former B&O F9, and the B unit is a former Chicago and Northwestern unit. And you can tell it's a loud K5LA. And the 2102 is on the return trip from Jim Thorpe back to North Reading, storming up the hill at Nesquehoning. And we move further down the line to Tamaqua, Pennsylvania, past the old Reading station. This wasn't my last view of the 2102 this particular summer. A month later, I was back for a double-headed ramble with the XGM&O 425. As you can hear, both 2102 and the 425 have those Reading-style 6-chime passenger whistles, but the 2102 also has a shrill, high-pitched freight whistle. it's not a hot day outside. It'd be hotter in here. How you guys doing, okay?
Yeah, we're hanging in there.
Good, good. Doing a hell of a job. Hell of a job. It's bigger than 611, I'll tell you. On a superb Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend in 2022, the new Hope and Ivyland Railroad was operating a series of Santa Claus specials, and one of the locomotives they had was 280 number 40, equipped with a 3-chime C&J whistle. That C&J whistle sounds great blowing at full blast. Number 40 was originally built in 1925 by Baldwin for the Lancaster and Chester Railway in South Carolina. Amidst a beautiful twilight sky, we see number 40 rounding the bends here as he's nearing New Hope. And the whistle on this comes off of an old Pennsylvania Railroad locomotive, I'm told. Gabe, you are a conductor on the Strasburg?
I'm a conductor and a full-time engineman here at the Strasburg Railroad Company. I've been here for 7 years.
Oh, wow. So tell me about the whistles that all these locomotives have.
So right now, 89 behind me is wearing a old Pennsylvania Railroad Banshee whistle, typically found on freight locomotives on the Pennsy. Also, locomotives that are not in service for today, such as 475, has a 7 Pacific 6 time, and 90, which is down for a rebuild, will have a Reading 6 time.
All right, what kind of horns do you collect?
Horns that I personally collect, I have a few. I have a Leslie A125, a ex-Pennsylvania Railroad SU3L, ex-Conrail RS3, and a Old Norfolk and Western S5T.
All right, beautiful horn. I'm a fan of the K5 LLA myself.
Those aren't too bad.
Yeah, on Long Island Railroad, we have 6 of them.
Oh, I'm sure.
I kill myself trying to get them, but, you know, up until recently I heard the Caltrain P2s, which didn't thrill me too much.
They're not the greatest.
Well, they're better than what they got now. So,
Yeah.
the little trumpet. So, well, Gabe, thanks a lot. And in December of 2024, I came back to the Strasburg Railroad to get the 475 with his former SP 6-chime whistle on it. Those 6-chime whistles could be found on a lot of SP steam locomotives, especially the 4400 class 484s. The whistle on this ex-Canadian National 26089 is a replica of a former Baltimore and Ohio 3-chime whistle. And we'll see and hear the 475 with that beautiful SP 6-chime whistle once more at the Red Caboose Motel grounds. Well, Thanksgiving weekend of 2024, another pleasant day but a little chilly, went to the Valley Railroad in Essex, Connecticut. And here we see 282 number 40 pulling out with a Crosby 3-chime whistle. Well, here's the Chinese-built Mikado 282 number 325, built to resemble a New Haven Railroad 282. And they say that the whistle is a New Haven-style passenger whistle. And here we catch the number 40 again with his Crosby whistle. Well, here's engine 97 with a New Haven Railroad 6-chime whistle.